It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman, and I am here with our executive director here at Redeemer Radio, Cindy Black, for Theology of the Body Thursday. Thanks for being back here, Cindy.
Good morning.
Time flies when you're having fun.
I know.
And it's Thursday again. The Youth Synod has been in the news a lot lately. It's been going on over in Rome. There hasn't been a whole lot of conclusive talking about what we've learned from it yet, but we've talked about theology of the aging body. We've talked a lot about birth and some of the family planning things and stuff like that, but haven't talked a whole lot about the youth and young adult body and what we can learn about and from that. And I was thinking about that and what is youth and young adult, and kind of with this conversation that's happening over in Rome, is it's such a variety of experiences whenever you're talking about these age group that's going through so many transitions logistically, with going from school to work, from home to living on your own. Some are getting married, some are having kids. And so there's kind of this practical transition, but also a physical transition whenever you're going through puberty and your hormones are changing and things like that. So I kind of was wondering what your thoughts are on the theology of that kind of transitional body and changing and aging for youth and young adults.
Well, I think, first of all, just acknowledging the wisdom of God, that so often we can focus on negative aspects of aging and even, transitions and things like that. But God had a wisdom in how we developed. Now, I do want to question him on his wisdom about the human brain not being fully developed, until in the 20s, but yet at 18 we consider we let them drive at 16, and then
you can have children physically before your brain is fully developed.
So I think there's a wisdom, but I think going back to the real grounding of the theology of the body that applies to any age in life, and then it's a matter of what does this look like at different stages, is that the deepest desires of the human heart are for the divine. So every longing that we have from early childhood through really can only be filled by God. That foundation, if that can continually be instilled in us and we can keep trying to grasp, what that means and try to make that part of our understanding of who we are and who other people are, that's going to help in emerging adulthood. That can be really the touchstone. There are a lot of transitions and people are at different places, and I think with our culture really considering adulthood, like actually adulting, as they call it, has kind of moved a little bit later and later in some regards when it comes to like responsibilities and working full time and providing for yourself. That there was a time when that was a lot earlier. And now with higher education and then even advanced degrees and things like that, that can be delayed. However, we're kind of entrusting people at a younger age to outside influences. So whereas like in the 50s and 60s and 70s, parents really did provide the main influence of their children and whatever neighborhood they were raised in and extended family and things like that really were kind of a cocoon that carried young people into adulthood, whereas now there's so many outside influences. You have basically global influences as you emerge into adulthood.
Which there's pros and cons with that. Like it's kind of nice to be exposed to some of the good that's out there, but also there's so much negative things to be exposed to, especially for young people. Right.
And I even think not just good in seeing the good that's out there, but I also think it can be helpful to have an understanding. Bishop Barron even commented that the most moving moment of the synod was this young man from Iraq who kind of put it into perspective that the young adult church in America has very different struggles than other places in the world, because he said, young adults are literally dying for their faith. They are being martyred because they believe in Jesus Christ or proclaim him. That influence has the potential for good, but it also does bring in a more worldly view as well.
One of the things that you mentioned was the development of the brain, and that it kind of happens maybe later than we would expect it to happen. But it does seem to line up with that kind of time where people start leaving the church. This idea of it going from a blind faith like a child, where you just believe because your parents raised you this way and that you've gone to church and you just believe it, to now my brain is being developed and now I'm questioning all of my beliefs. Like, do I believe this just because my parents raised me this way, or do I believe it because it's true? And so I wonder how often we are aware of that this is a time of questioning, and that's a good positive thing because their brain is developing and they're smarter and they're rational, and now they want to verify their beliefs. Is the church there to respond to that need?
Well, I would say we have a lot of room for growth in that regard. And again, going back to Bishop Barron, that's one of the things that he points out. I've emphasized in the Theology of the Body and in accompanying our brothers and sisters along the way in the faith, the art of listening, that we have to be ready to listen to people's questions, to their doubts, to where they are, meet them where they are. But then Bishop Barron says that we also have to be ready to teach. Not in a preachy, like I have all the answers kind of way, but the church provides every answer to the longings in the human heart.
Yeah.
So to really be prepared and to understand, one of the big aspects, like you mentioned, they start questioning and there's a more rational thought, is that science and faith are perfectly compatible.
Right.
And I think that we haven't done a good enough job of presenting that. In the interviews when the Word on Fire was going out, so many of the young people said they didn't believe in God, that they were more objective and scientific and things like that. So, like,
as if they were contradictory.
Yes. Bishop Barron really challenges us that there are other ways of knowing truth than just science. That, philosophy, poetry, art, those things all reveal truth, that it's no less true than things that can be empirically proven.
Right. We're talking about Theology of the Body here with Cindy Black, talking about youth and young adults and this time of transition and our response to that transition. And you talked a little bit about listening and responding to questions. What are some things that we should be doing maybe as preparation for that transition? So I think sometimes we wait until somebody is questioning the faith and then we respond to it, rather than thinking about, I guess I don't want to call it preventative medicine type of a thing, but anticipating maybe some of these questions in our youth and young adults and helping them to understand that this is why we believe this, instead of just this is what we believe.
Yeah, I think one of the things is sharing our own doubts and struggles.
Oh, good.
I'm seeing this more and more, is the idea of mentorship, like a faith mentorship, that when we journey with people, we're really required to share our own journey to a certain extent and at certain appropriate times to let them into our personal witness and testimony. That it's really stories and it's really seeing the joy of the Christian life lived out even through the struggles that then open up the conversation. And then when young people do start doubting or questioning, it's not like a crisis, or not just like, okay, it's not compatible. Like,
right.
Because I have these doubts, then I must be agnostic or atheist.
Right.
That there aren't many people who don't go through doubts.
Right.
I think one of the other things that can really help the emerging adult is the more we can affirm the dignity of every human person, both them and then every person that we encounter, the more we'll become authentic witness, because young people really do have that sense of justice and that desire for justice. And if we can look at each person being rooted in the image and likeness of God, and we can show how living that out really does make a better world for everyone, I think then they'll be more likely to say, there is something to this because it does make the world a better place.
Right.
That the world is lacking if we just look at it from a scientific or a limited perspective of materialism or something like that.
Well, and two, whenever we're talking about transition, whether it be in our bodies or externally, where do we find the stability in that time of transition? Ideally, our families would provide some stability. Our families are not perfect, and some of them are really struggling with that stability. But ultimately, we need to find our stability in Christ, in God. And when our young people don't have that, they're kind of just lost in this mix, trying to figure out their place, trying to figure out their calling, trying to figure out, what am I going to do next? Where am I going to work? Who am I going to marry? How many kids am I going to have? Like all of these questions that whenever you don't have that faith, whenever you don't have a God that you can depend on and have as stability, you're just kind of lost. And I think I see that a lot in people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think recognizing too that there isn't just one path that you have to figure out, like, okay, where am I going to college? What is my career going to be? What is my family going to look like?
Yeah.
That for most people, I would say what they thought at 18 or 22, and then when they're 40,
Right.
it does not look anything like that. And it's in most cases, it's better.
Right.
And so I think being able to share and help young people to understand that God can work with anything. He works with our woundedness. He works with mistakes that we've made. All those things He can bring good out of.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this youth synod and what we can learn from it, and to hear more of these kind of examples, like you mentioned, the guy from Iraq. That things are different all over the world, and we need to learn from each other. And maybe this kind of global look at youth and young adults will give us a different perspective and how we can reach out and be Christ to others, and how we can love people going through this time of transition as a church and as people too.
Yeah, and those of us my age can thank God that we're through it.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, thank you so much, Cindy, for another Theology Body Thursday. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you have any ideas or questions or suggestions for Theology Body Thursday, let us know. You can email show@redeemerradio.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media, where we post our past episodes of The Kyle Hyman Show. And our thanks to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for underwriting the show and for their support. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of The Kyle Hyman Show. Until then, remember to leave room for the Holy Spirit.